All right, here we go on the Monday. Okay, we are starting in just 4 minutes. 4 minutes. All right, folks, we're going to start in just a moment. 1 minute out. Less than 1 minute. Less than 1 minute. I'm telling you, who knew it was that complicated? Christ. All right, we're going to begin. Well, folks, good afternoon on this Monday after the long weekend. It is Monday, July 7th, 1:06. This portion of our program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Stop in and see them, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown, where right now also they have great selection. Fresh vegetables, native corn, delicious peaches. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. They have annuals, perennials, trees and shrubs, hanging pots, 10-inch, 12-inch moss baskets, hanging impatiens, pansy, marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots, vegetable plants and herbs, tropical mandevillas and hibiscus plants, screen lumen mulch available. Now remember, at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, they're a full-scale nursery. Everything you need to make your home a showstopper. They're open 7 days a week. Gift certificates are available. at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. As always, visit our website, DePetro.com. We do have latest video up. We rode with, Westerly Police, Road Patrol Live with Westerly. We also rode with Cranston. We often break stories there. It's all at DePetro.com. We also, that's a good way if you'd like to send me an email. If you'd like to reach me, you can do that at DePetro.com. Brought to you by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge, and the market is open. The Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue in West Warwick. Folks, remember this summer and winter for all your propane needs, heating and cooling, call Propane Plus today, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus for all your heating and cooling. They have a very user-friendly website, residential or commercial. You just log on at propaneplus.com and then type in your zip code. You can depend on Propane Plus. Put in your zip code, residential or commercial, and boom, they're available 24/7. You can depend on Propane Plus, 401-885-4209. All right, coming up, we are going to speak with Justin Katz, our segment Politics This Week. I want to just mention, folks, some people get confused. I post that as of right now, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee is running unopposed. I have people that post, here are people that should run against him. I didn't say, who do you think should run against him? He's running unopposed. And these governors are not popular. Either is Governor Healy in Massachusetts, who's actually more of a disgrace, and I didn't think that was possible. But as of right now, he is running unopposed with a 19% approval rating. Thus, when we had a thunderstorm on Thursday night, the night before the 4th, there are people still without power. Folks, it's not once in a while incompetence. It's a steady stream of incompetence. And it was, I was very happy for President Trump that his big, beautiful bill passed, signed it into law on the 4th of July at 5 o'clock outside right at the White House. But, Mike Johnson, when that passed, what is it going to take that we don't have any representation in Washington? Seth Magaziner, he doesn't represent me. Does he represent you? What about Gabe Amo? Look at the senators, the Congress people of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Like, when does it end? When does this foolishness, incompetence, Gabe Amo, I'm flying back to D.C., and it's all nonsense. Yes, for Medicaid, guess what? You're going to have to work. That shouldn't be a new concept. When did it ever become acceptable that all these people are getting all these things for free? And the problem is, as we saw during the year of COVID, if you pay people not to work, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to work. Free healthcare, and you don't have to do a thing. Seth Magaziner, has he ever called on this? He was the general treasurer. Has he ever called on the state to stop spending so much money? Never. The Rhode Island budget, it's embarrassing. Do you know New Hampshire, they do a 2-year budget. They do a budget every 2 years. New Hampshire just passed a 2-year budget, a little over $15 billion. The Rhode Island 1-year budget is over $14 billion. New Hampshire, almost identical population. It's even a bigger state. Where's all the money go? Why are all these people getting Medicaid? Why all these people? Who are these people put on? Where are they from? See, we already know the answers to a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is when you have people that arrive in our state, and it's not just Rhode Island, but Massachusetts, they arrive at women and infants, and they're pregnant, and they immediately put them on Medicaid. So why is that going on? Why should we have to pay for that? Who are all these people? Many of the people that they're saying they're going to be knocked off, that they're incapable of registering twice a year. It never should have been given to people, just like all these benefits. It should never be, just sit back, we'll give you everything. It's been proven time and again, it's not good for them. And that becomes, I think that's one of the biggest differences in the parties. And obviously, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee, he's the worst person for it, because all he does is cut deals to try to get himself reelected. And who knows what deals he's going to promise between now and right now. He is running unopposed. And by the way, don't mention these fringe people. There are novelty candidates. There are people that run. I mean, years ago, you had Chris Young. That was his thing. He never held elective office. He would just run for political office. He'd like to see himself once in a while get on TV. He'd like to hear himself get onto a show. He had no plans. He was never successful. He just wasted time. And now we have more people that run like that. But that's not when I'm talking about someone running, I mean a viable candidate, someone that has experience. I can't stand these people that say, I only spent, $5.99 or $10 on my, and you didn't accomplish anything. You got 2 to 3%. It's always like that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about, and it's obviously not just the state. The Northeast is in decline. More and more people. When you have the mayor of New York who's talking about redistribution of wealth and heavy taxes on anyone that earns money, you have the governor of New York saying, and who's a Democrat, saying this is dangerous. We can't afford to have more people flee the state, and they will go live somewhere else. If anything we've learned, it's the people that have money, they're actually the most mobile. They're the ones that can pick up and leave. So, and Rhode Island starts to fall into that. Now, we're going to talk to Justin Katz, politics this week, but also ICE made an arrest. ICE arrested someone they were looking for, a sex offender from Brazil. And where was he hiding? In Cranston, in the sanctuary state of Rhode Island in Cranston. I don't hear anyone question what is it that would draw someone from Brazil, a sex offender that they're looking for, that ICE is looking for, what would lead them to hide in Cranston? I don't hear anyone asking that question. Folks, we're going to talk to Justin Katz, managing editor of anchorrising.com. But before we do, I want to remind you, if you had any damage to your roof because of the storm, call Roofco Rhode Island today. Free inspection, 401-868-7149. 401-868-7149. Roofco Rhode Island, whether it's wind damage, leaky roof, curled shingles, missing lifted or curled shingles, granules in the gutter. Did you have any damage done to your roof from the storm? Call Roofco. Free inspection. Many times your insurance company will take care of it. 401-868-7149. You're going to increase the value on your home. Did you have branches fall on your roof? Call Roofco. Free estimate. That's wind damage. They'll take care of it. 401-868-7149. I share their social media. Folks, let's bring him on. It's time for politics this week. He is the managing editor of anchorrising.com. We say welcome once again to Justin Katz. Welcome once again, Justin.
Thank you. It's great to be here, John.
Justin, let's start off. I want to just get your thoughts. Some of this borders on definition of insanity, which is, you do the same thing over and over, but you expect different results. All right, you had a thunderstorm early evening on Thursday. Here it was Saturday, Sunday. You still had people without power. You also had Governor McKee putting out that this is unacceptable. I would disagree with that. I would say that under the McKee administration, this type of inefficiency, and as a matter of fact, the grid map was down for New England Energy. I would argue that I think it's very acceptable under the McKee administration.
Well, it seems to be acceptable under just general Rhode Island policy. I mean, it's been over a decade anyway that I've noticed every storm, people have installed more generators because people know around here, just like they know to get their kids out of public school, you can't rely on the infrastructure. And, McKee's out there, this is unacceptable, we're providing oversight. And it almost becomes laughable because it's the policies of the government, these ridiculous mandates, the energy mandates, their willingness to go along with activists to stop less expensive energy like gas development around here, that constant pressure on our economy and our infrastructure. We're not going to get good energy service here. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's for him to be coming out like this and acting like the grown up in the room. These politicians, there's never any accountability for them. And I think you're right. Clearly they accept this. It's a public utility, but they just can't run anything. And they love to be able to turn the focus away from themselves and what they've done and put it on a somewhat private entity as if it's all their fault.
Now, Justin, also, energy to me, it's not enough of a story of, let's face it, all these windmills off the coast, I am unaware that they've made any dent, that they've helped out in any way. The Trump administration, they've talked about wind energy. To convert it is actually the most expensive form of energy. I'm surprised it's not more of a topic. And I think it should be of an issue, lack of the pipeline. I think source of energy in the state, I believe it should be a bigger issue.
Oh, absolutely. But it's not, because energy, especially green energy, solar and wind, is one of those areas where the progressives have really perfected what they do. They scare everybody with the climate change and global warming so that everybody feels like we've got to do something right now before the end of the world. Then they put it through this green, feel-good, progressive lens. So you're not just doing energy policy, you're saving the planet. And then they push it through their corrupt channels, so everybody gets a kickback and the money just flows, and public subsidies and so on and so forth, and ultimately taxpayers will pay for it. That's perfect for them. They don't want a nice, cheap bit of energy where Canada and out in the Western United States, they're fracking and creating cheap gas energy that can be piped right in here. They don't want that. They want this difficulty. So you rely on them. They're always there to take your money and make it seem like they're doing something. But green energy is exactly what the grift that the Democrats have been on for decades. And our local media won't want to cover that because they're either true believers or they're in on it. And either way, we're just not going to get the real story of dying animals and the expense and the damage to our views. It's just not going to happen.
Folks, again, it's Politics This Week. With us, Justin Katz, managing editor, anchorrising.com. Justin, I also want to hear your thoughts. It was very dramatic. You had Magaziner, Gabe Amo, a lot of gaslighting, flying down to D.C. We're going to stop this bill. They were posting that, Democrats were celebrating. I thought the whole charade of Jeffries talking, nonstop, trying to filibuster, completely wasting time. And then in the end, it did pass. So I'd like to hear your thoughts and reaction to how the Rhode Island reps were reacting to this whole thing.
Well, to a person, right down to Helena Foulkes, who's probably going to run for governor again, they're just partisan Democrats. They've been told that this is a big issue. They've been given we're going to call it the big ugly bill. Oh, very creative. And they're just all of them using the same language. What I find striking, though, is among these supposedly sober, responsible mainstream politicians is the extremity. They are always at the people are going to die. You're going to kill people. This is going to destroy the world. To the extent the Republicans in Washington are using their leverage to constrain the way Democrats take taxpayer money and distribute it among their allies, maybe it's the end of the world for some of them. But they're always constantly talking about how dangerous Republicans are, right down to McKee using his kind of his persona as the governor and doing videos about the GOP. And this is why I don't know if you've seen surveys just in the past few days of the core of the Democrat Party, the constituents, are asking for more violence. They're suggesting people are going to have to start being willing to be arrested and shot. That's why, because we're always constantly, from these supposedly mainstream politicians like our representatives and senators, we're constantly getting this rhetoric that people are going to be killed by policy decisions in Washington, when most people really don't care.
Justin, you know what else I notice is whether it's Governor McKee or Magaziner, and they talk about how many, and notice the language, Rhode Islanders are going to lose their health coverage. Well, notice they don't say U.S. citizens. To me, that is they're coy with the language, because that tells me that, and like we've talked about, there are people that show up here from other countries. There are women from, say, Guatemala and other places. They arrive at women and infants. They're 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant. And so themselves, the child, their family, they're all put on Medicaid. And, to me, those are the people that we're talking about. And then you have people that, listen, you're going to have to work and you're going to need to register. And when we think about how valuable healthcare coverage is, they dwell on the people be kicked off. But what I find missing from Governor McKee and, say, like a Congressman Magaziner, is they don't talk about how is it fair to all the people that work so they'll have health coverage. How is it fair to them that they have to do this in order to support themselves or cover their family, when you have all these other people that basically come in here and they expect everyone to foot the bill?
Right. Well, that's exactly right. But this is what we've talked about a lot, and I call the government plantation. This is their business model. They draw people in here to whom they can give services, and then they try to charge everybody else for it and reap the rewards and votes from those people. That's what they do. I haven't seen it, I don't think, in the past few years, but there are at least 2 years running where the first baby born in Rhode Island was to illegal parents. It was just becoming a regular pattern. This month I've started really ramping up to multiple posts on Anchor Rising per day. And one of the things I looked at was SNAP, the food stamp coverage. Rhode Island is one of just a handful of states repeatedly, the USDA, the federal agency who runs the program, finds Rhode Island is giving out more benefits than people they think should be eligible. So statistically, we give up to, say, 109% of the people who should be eligible, we give benefits to. That's part of what they do, that they need, these Democrats, they need that constant influx of people who want their services, and then they can turn around and ask everybody else to fund them. But it's part of their business model and the way they intend to keep power in the state.
Justin, speaking of Helena, folks, she did comment like that. She hasn't announced yet. I'm starting to think that she's just a different, flavor of McKee. Anyone that out of the box, she's, think of the number of people that voted for President Trump, and they're not just Republicans, they're independents. To me, it's as if she just falls in line, as you say, the big ugly bill. I think first time around when she ran, maybe it seemed a little bit different, but right now, I'd like to hear your thought. I don't see anything that leads me to believe that it would be anything different than just, electing Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee for another 4 years.
As the time goes on, she seems less and less unique. She's just another partisan Democrat, and we've got plenty of those. There was, when she first ran, a feeling of, there was some obvious analogy to Gina Raimondo, and there was a feeling that she's been in business, maybe she'll be more business friendly, but she has not, that I've seen, taken any opportunity to say, here's how I'm different from Governor McKee or the standard Democrat politician. And, I almost feel for her, because I wonder if this is endemic in the Democrat Party. They cannot move right on anything. Their base will just not allow it. They'll be destroyed in social media and in the local media and among the activists. They cannot say, hey, maybe we should soften on this particular economic issue. They just can't. They've got to be lockstep. And I think that's why you see an outright communist on a path toward being mayor of New York, is because the Democrats have put themselves in this position where they've they've scared away a lot of people on the right, and they've relied so heavily on the activist base. Much of it is hugely funded, perhaps by other countries, but certainly by American billionaires. That's who they need in their coalition. So they can't, there's nowhere for somebody like Helena Foulkes to go. She has to do, the best she can do is be somewhat moderate like McKee, maybe a little more competent, but we don't know.
Now, Justin, also there's talk that Rhode Island Congressman Seth Magaziner may have a challenger. And it's someone that he's kind of an insider. I don't think a lot of people know him. That's not a bad thing. But what do you make of the fact that Dr. Scully, who has certainly been in and out of the news, especially during 2020 and COVID, that he is taking a serious look at running for that CD2 seat?
Well, I think for one thing, he's got a good opportunity and he's getting out in front of it. A lot of the time in recent decades, it seems like the people who run for Congress on the Republican side are just, we've got a blank space. Who wants to fill the blank space this time? But if he's really this far out in advance, he has time to craft a message, and he could have a good one. He's been in that district for a long time. He's a known member of the community, contrary to Magaziner. And so he could make a case for it. And I think he's got his own, he's got some money. He's been a successful doctor, so he's got some running room there. I have a lot of hope for that. And, frankly, every Republican ought to be thinking how they can explain to Rhode Islanders, look, you need somebody on the GOP side when the government flips in Washington. You can't have use all 4 seats saying the same thing over and over again, antagonizing Republicans. It's just not going to work. Challenge for, I think, Dr. Scully will be figuring out how to massage his history, which I like, and I like what he's done with fighting back against the COVID restrictions and so on, and supporting the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. But people will look at that and say he's not going to be a moderate New England Republican. He's going to be a far right MAGA guy. So that's some of the messaging I think he has to push through. But I think he's got a shot.
Yeah, I like it. I think he is the type of candidate. Let's face it, you gotta have someone that could handle themselves on a stage. I've met him a couple times. He's well spoken, as you say, is a physician. He's got some resources, and right now Magaziner does not live in the district. So I of all the different names that sometimes pop up with this stuff, I think that's a pretty good one. I also just want to get your thought that Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee. So they had flag raising Cape Verdean festival. It was actually last night, India Point Park. I hit some of that traffic. But at the end of it, some nutcase rides over there to East Providence City Hall, and he's got a Nazi flag, and he stomps on the Cape Verdean flag, and I think also the American flag. Now, Governor McKee spoke out on that and made a point to speak out on it. But also over the weekend at the East Providence mayor, he posted that it was old graffiti along where there's a Crescent Park used to be, and I guess they still have a carousel there. But somebody spray painted "Free Palestine" all over that, and that is met with silence by Governor McKee. He doesn't say or criticize that, but he did speak out against this idiot that drove to City Hall, East Providence City Hall, was stomping on the flag. I'm just curious, any thoughts on that, Justin?
Well, it's all posturing from these folks. They call it hate speech. What they really want to do is censor people who don't agree with them and make it hate speech to step out of line with anything. And they encourage it, and the news media encourages it. I mean, if you watch the video, the guy basically came up, it was like 5 seconds. He came up, knocked a couple flags over the U.S. flag and apparently the Cape Verdean flag, and stepped on the Cape Verdean flag. There are people walking by who hardly even noticed it happened. But to read the news, you would think it happened during the ceremony, like the guy swung in on a vine and created a scene. It was almost like nothing. And even in his statement, the governor misstated, I would say. The guy made it sound like the guy was carrying or waving a Nazi flag. He had it on him with a knife, which is very strange, but the police chased him down and he happened to have these implements. And like you said, he's obviously got some mental issues going on, but it was such a small event. They make it seem like this. There's nobody was hurt, and there's not even information that the flag was damaged, contrary to, as you say, a graffiti, which you have to wash off. I think you pick up the flags and you're done. it's way out of whack, but it's part of the Democrats' messaging. They need this stuff because if people on their side aren't scared that the right is coming to get them, then there's no reason to vote for them. People might start to look around and go, wait a second, they're destroying our community here, these Democrats. Maybe we should do something. But they love when these things happen. It's right in line with their message.
Yeah, there's all kinds of nutcases out there. I remember in 2020, you'd have Black Lives Matter and Antifa marching along, and sometimes they'd pick up some stragglers along the way. Somebody would, some downtown denizen would just see them and then jump in. And I remember this one guy that started screaming he was against RIPTA for whatever reason. I think he probably got kicked off a bus. But he didn't become the focal point of the protest. He was just some whack job that jumped in. Folks, it's time for Katz's Corner, and this is a story that Justin Katz has picked up on. And what do you have for us this week, Justin?
So it's maybe a small thing, but it caught my eye, and I think it's telling. Rhode Island College, publicly subsidized college, is going to be cutting some programming, notably women's studies, because nobody's signing up for them. And I thought it was interesting because the public's radio, supposedly, taxpayer subsidized nonpartisan radio, had an interview with one of the women's studies chair there. And to listen to these folks, you'd think they think it's just part of the college experience. College ought to have women's studies just because, even if nobody takes it, they ought to know it's there and it'll feel good about it. And I think we really need to rein these things in around America, because this is how we're subsidizing ideologies that really just want to tear us apart. So I thought people might put a little smile on somebody's face to know that Rhode Island College has gone, at least with financial reasonableness, to get rid of some of these programs that nobody's taking, but we're subsidizing.
Yeah, and also I'm glad you mentioned that, because this has also always been a bone of contention. First of all, Rhode Island College is going through a terrible time, simply because as soon as they started offering CCRI for free, so many people would say, I'll go there for 1 or 2 years, then just go there for 4 years. But CCRI, they, had kids taking philosophy and some of these classes when there were so many students at CCRI that were taking remedial classes of math and English, because when the kids would arrive at CCRI, they still couldn't do, 10th grade math. So it really doesn't make sense to have someone taking a philosophy class when they still are doing like 9th grade math. So Rhode Island College, for whatever reason, if people aren't signing up for it, then they're not signing up for it. Folks, again, it is Justin Katz, our segment Politics This Week from anchorrising.com. Justin, excellent job as always, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you, John. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, folks, there it is. Politics This Week on this Monday. This portion of our program on this Monday, July 7th, and it's brought to you by, now listen, maybe you've been thinking of redoing your home. Arch Design Builders. They specialize in residential design. Call Ed and Roxanne today, 401-207-4124. 401-207-4124. Arch Design Builders. Maybe you've been thinking of redoing your kitchen, or maybe you're redoing your bathroom, or maybe your basement, or deck, or a special project. Arch Design Builders. Give them a call. Set up that free meeting. Let's dream. Let Ed and Roxanne see the space, and then let's talk about what they could do for you. 401-218-9707. It's Arch Design and Builders for your home. And remember, maybe it's a new kitchen. Maybe it's a new bathroom. I know with Ed and Roxanne, many times they'll come in, they meet with people, and sometimes it starts off a small job. Then it turns into, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you, redo the basement? Can you redo, we want a new deck. We want to redo our home. Arch Design Builders. You're going to be dealing with the best. Give them a call today, 401-218-9707. I want to repeat, as of right now, and I know it could change, but as of right now, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee is running unopposed. And I think there should be nonstop people pointing out, what is wrong with his policies. Folks, I also want to, some people are saying, various Republicans, that, that may run. I want to reemphasize today something that I talk about. I think I talk about it more than anyone, but I'll know the Republican Party is serious when they make an effort to reform mail ballots. Mail ballots are a terrible, terrible, terrible problem, ballot harvesting in Rhode Island. And what do I mean by that? Last time around, in 2022, the only reason Governor McKee beat Helena Foulkes in that Democrat primary was ballot harvesting. He had the unions go out and they go to all these nursing homes and assisted living, and they rake in and take all the votes out of those places. McKee beat Helena Foulkes. He lost day of voting. He lost people going to vote that day. He lost, but he beat her in the primary because of ballot harvesting. Now, by the way, the same thing happened to Alan Fung. He beat Seth Magaziner day of voting, and then he held steady with early voting, but then Alan Fung got blown out with the mail ballots. And so that was 2022. Nothing has been done to change that. One of the best examples is Aaron Gukian. He ran for lieutenant governor. He beat Sabina Matos in Warwick. Aaron Gukian, he beat Sabina Matos day of voting at the polls. He won. He should have been the lieutenant governor. But hold on. See, Matos, she benefited from being alongside Governor McKee, so she got all those mail ballots. So she ended up winning. So when it comes to any type of talk, I'll know that people are serious when they start to rein that in. And just to be more specific, and I don't hear anyone else talk about this for whatever reason, but Massachusetts and Connecticut both limit the number of ballots that one person can collect to 10, no more than 10. No one individual can collect more than 10 ballots in Massachusetts and Connecticut. In Rhode Island, it's unlimited. So one union member can hand in 500 ballots, can hand in 1,000 ballots. Governor McKee is once again teaming up with organized labor. And he's got a 19% approval rating. Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee, he has a lower approval rating than Chafee did when Chafee decided not to run for re-election. The question is, why would McKee think he can win? And the answer is the mail ballots. And I'm telling you, and you don't hear anyone talking about it in any way. Now, I also want to talk about, this is one of those stories. It should get bigger coverage. It won't get bigger coverage, but I want to make sure you know about it. But at the same time, I also want to remind you, if you're someone that was hit by that storm, and folks, remember, when disaster strikes, maybe it's flood water, or maybe it's, you have a fire, disaster strikes, you can count on ServPro of Providence. If you ever have a commercial fire in your business, call ServPro, or your home. Whether it's when disaster strikes, everything changes. ServPro of Providence, whether it's water damage, fire, mold, storm recovery, you can depend. ServPro of Providence. Call them today, 401-941-5500. You can find them on social media. ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. They're available 24/7. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You have a disaster, you have a flood, maybe a pipe burst, or maybe you have a fire. This is who I would call ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. So what's the story that I believe that won't get enough attention? Well, ICE in Boston posted this story. ICE Boston arrested Andrew De Silva, an illegal from Brazil. Where was he hiding? I always think it's interesting. Where would a criminal be hiding? He has a criminal history, conviction for 2 counts, second-degree child molestation, sexual assault. He's from Brazil, not supposed to be in the United States. He's already been convicted of 2 counts of second-degree child molestation, sexual assault. And where does he choose to hide? Cranston, Rhode Island. Folks, what does that tell you? What does it tell you? He's obviously, number one, he's an illegal. Number two, he's not even supposed to be in the country. He has convictions. He's been convicted back in Brazil. 50 states to choose from. All right, let's take Alaska off the list. 49 states. Is he hiding in Florida? No. Is he hiding in Texas? No. Where's he hiding? From Brazil, wanted sex offender. Cranston, Rhode Island. Folks, I don't understand why there isn't a greater effort. There's a reason why they call it a sanctuary state. It's a state where criminals seek sanctuary. There are some people that continue to allow it, encourage it to flourish, and then you have people like Tom Homan that are trying to rein it in and get a handle on it. Why would someone like that, he's not supposed to be in the country, but he's in the country, convicted sex offender, he's not hiding on Long Island, he's not hiding in downtown Boston, he's hiding in Rhode Island. There's a reason why they hide in Rhode Island. And no one really talks about it. I talk about it. Folks, this portion of our program, hey, Kids Club on the Pike, their summer camp is underway. Now they're right off of 295. Kids Club on the Pike, birthday party venue, before and after school care, preschool. But right now, for your children or grandchildren, take advantage of their summer camp. Call Kristen today, 401-443-5336. Now they're located right off of 295, right on the Cranston-Johnston line. It's Kids Club on the Pike, and they run a great summer camp. Call them today, 401-443-5336 for Kids Club on the Pike. Well, folks, good afternoon. Again, obviously, listen, heartbreaking story with these floods down in Texas. It's frightening how quickly the water could rise with some of these flash floods. It's a major problem in parts of Texas. And I was on Newsmax earlier where some people, some Democrats are taking the attitude like, well, good, that's what the MAGA Republicans get. And do you see that there's a disconnect right now? There's a disconnect. The Democrat Party is lost. I am so happy for President Trump that he got his bill passed. Hey, he won, and he believes in the legislation, and he believes that it's going to be good for the economy. He believes that this will be positive for the country. He won. Give him a chance to govern. Then you have Elon Musk. Like many, I don't know what to make of Elon. I don't like this whole let's start a new party. What are you talking about? Who would join the Elon Musk new party? Most likely you're going to get rejects from the Republican Party. I can't stand that type of talk. And in the past, I've spoken very positively about Elon Musk. I've been on X. We're not there today, but I have a problem with, like, where's he going with this? President Trump was very good to Elon Musk. He was with the right group. We're going to start our own party because he doesn't. Why? Because he's not getting his, I have a problem with the whole thing. Who would he get to run in our area? As if the Republican Party should have to deal with that. The Democrat Party right now is absolutely just under siege. The Democrat that's getting the most attention is this Democrat socialist in New York. And I don't think that's a bad thing for the Republican Party, as a matter of fact. Folks, I want to remind you about J. Perry Paving. Remember, high quality, fair pricing, exceptional service. Call them today for a free estimate. If you're a veteran, or maybe you're related to a veteran, maybe your grandmother's a veteran, a grandfather, and you've been thinking of getting your driveway paved, call J. Perry Paving today. Free estimate, 401-732-1730. Let's just say your mom or dad or your son or daughter, they're a veteran. Well, J. Perry Paving, they have a special package for veterans. Give them a call today. You know what your relative, your brother, or your uncle, or your mom or dad, you know what they would love? To get their driveway paved. J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. Everyone, when I post how Governor McKee is running unopposed, and then there's people, oh no, there's Republicans looking at it. I get it. See, part of it is they feel if you announce now, then they have to basically forfeit the summer. That if you announce you're running, and I'm not saying they're totally wrong, but I like when the Republican Party goes after, whether it's Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee, with this bridge fiasco that continues, then the amount of people without power. By the way, you don't hear any talk of any companies coming in to do anything, improve, the life of the state, improve the state in any way. It just kind of falls in. But then you have like a Helena Foulkes. How is she going to be any different than McKay? I don't have any evidence that she is. She immediately goes on the attack on President Trump with this bill. So, listen, I think the president has the right group of people around him. He should be given a chance to govern. But I'll feel better about the situation in a Republican candidate. What's the point of this doctor that may run against Seth Magaziner? Well, what's the point of running against Congressman Magaziner if you're going to allow Magaziner to steal it with mail ballots? And you can't out-ballot that crew because they have organized labor. And many of these nursing facilities, assisted living, they're controlled by the union nurses, and they lift all those ballots out of there. If Rhode Island had fair, legitimate elections, McKee would not be running for re-election. If Rhode Island had fair, legitimate elections, Seth Magaziner could be easily beaten. But the problem is, when does that change? When do the Republicans at the State House, when do they start to get it in gear? When do they start to say enough of this? When does that start? I wish someone would tell me. I'd love to know when that's going to start. Because until then, you're just setting up new people that are going to fail. You're setting up new people that are going to either try to run for governor or try to run for lieutenant governor. Next year are all the statewides: governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general. What is the point of recruiting people? They work endlessly. They put together a campaign, they raise money, and then they get demolished by mail ballots. By the way, mail ballot provisions that are different than Massachusetts and Connecticut. If they work in Massachusetts and Connecticut, why do we have to have special provisions? So unless that's changed, we're going to have someone that will step forward, and they're going to run for governor and get, everyone excited, and then everyone gets excited. Like, what's the point? What's the point? Someone's going to run against Congressman Seth Magaziner. Maybe someone's going to run against Gabe Amo, who I think is very beatable. I think they're both beatable. I think Amo's really beatable. But what is the point if it just becomes an exercise in futility of you got someone to run, so you don't have just they're not running unopposed, and then they run, but then everyone knows they're going to get like. What's the point of that? What's the point of getting clobbered in that way, folks? This portion of our program brought to you by hey, call Corey today for quality seal coating. 401-283-9815. They can resurface pickleball court, tennis court, basketball court, sport court, epoxy garages and patios, decorative concrete flooring. It's quality asphalt seal coating. Call Corey for a free quote. They're another one. I share their social media. It's really fantastic. Now, they also do line striping, epoxy. Call Corey today. Get a free quote. 401-283-9815. 401-283-9815 for quality asphalt seal coating. They can make your pavement look like new, fix potholes, line striping. They also, for your parking lot, make sure the lines are bright, direct traffic safely, but they could resurface your tennis court or a pickleball court, which is huge now, or basketball court. They'll also epoxy garages and patios, decorative concrete flooring. Call Corey right now, 401-283-9815 for quality asphalt seal coating. Folks, again, good afternoon on this Monday. We will be out with Road Patrol Live later. As, listen, law enforcement, they do their part. Certainly been a little bit quiet. I think, the big national story is just this Texas flood. 100 dead in those poor campers where all those young lives lost and happening so quickly. But closer to home in East Providence, someone went to Crescent Park, and they have where Crescent Park used to be, and they have the carousel, and I think the clam shacks there, and somebody wrote Free Palestine all over that. And you don't hear any elected Democrat officials calling it out, other than the mayor of East Providence did, Mayor De Silva. He called it out. But where are the rest of them? See, there's certain vandalism that's allowed. There's certain vandalism that is tolerated. And I like how Justin described some nut rides to East Providence City Hall and stomps on the flags. They go and get him, and then he has a knife and a Nazi flag. I have no idea who that person is. Just some nutcase that showed up there, clearly like unglued. Good. I'm glad they arrested him. I hope he goes to jail. I've had people on Instagram, how come you're not posted about your people? They're certainly not my people. I'm a member of Rhode Island Coalition for Israel. Certainly not with that. But Governor McKee, Rhode Island will always be tolerant. Why doesn't he condemn the Free Palestine graffiti that is all over Crescent Park? Because the Democrat Party accepts something like that. Folks, as far as the Republican Party, I mean, what's it going to take? That's why I really don't like this Elon Musk. Like, what is that? Let's start a new party. No, there is a party. There's a party that absolutely has galvanized people, and now you want to disrupt it? You want to be Ross Perot? You want to destroy, difficult it is to do what President Trump did, and he survived the assassination attempt, and now you want to what? We're going to start a new party, and who's going to run the new party? Like, it's just so pathetic and ridiculous is what it is. Finally, Tom Homan and ICE, they're taking action. Finally, the country's back on the upswing. Let's start a new political party. I don't like any of that. And President Trump has been very good to Elon Musk. I get the whole thing. Richest man in the world, SpaceX, Tesla. But enough already. Wrong. If you don't like it, then just sit on the sidelines. We're going to start, who would you recruit in Rhode Island and Massachusetts? We're going to start a new political party. So, I'm also seeing Governor McKee, new housing being built across the state, mixed income development. I don't know anyone that is happy with some of this. They're destroying a lot of communities by making it that there's reasons why people like to keep up their home, save their money, and live in a nice community. And this is now the Democrat Party that says, no, we're going to ruin it. That Democrat, New York City socialist Democrat who won the primary to be the next mayor of New York, he's got supporters around here. He's got supporters in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. If he wins, part of me says, I'm glad he's going to be the poster boy, focal point of the Democrat Party. But if he wins and becomes the mayor of New York City, then you're really going to start to see people flee. And then you're also going to start to see some of these programs, other people try to implement them. The Providence City Council, it's bad enough they're basically progressive socialists. But you have some people. The state has come pretty close. If Governor McKee had lost to that Aaron Ruggenberg, when Gina Raimondo left, he would have been named the governor. And he's the type. That's a Bernie Sanders type. That's a socialist. Or as President Trump said, a communist. So, do you also notice that law enforcement continues to be under attack? That's one of the reasons. And I want to thank Westerly Police. We rode with them. We're going to be riding with Cranston coming up. We're going to ride with Westerly again. Obviously, we do our thing. Folks, some of these voices, they just try to incite trouble. We're just at a dangerous point where these are not the policies that some of these socialists. He wants to defund the police. He wants to he's running to be the mayor of New York. He won the Democrat primary. He wants to empty the prisons. They talk about defund the police. A lot of these policies, then they start to filter into other cities. I think you're going to continue to see a mass exodus of the Northeast. All right, folks, listen, thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, we will be out with Road Patrol Live later as we kick things off. Stay tuned for the news. We'll see you tonight, Road Patrol Live. Enjoy. Stay cool on this Monday.